Two people graduate from the same university, same year, same degree. One spends 30 years in a stable corporate job, salary, benefits, pension. The other spends 30 years building something uncertain and uncomfortable. By 60, the first has a reliable income and a life that looks from the outside completely reasonable. The second has financial freedom, multiple income streams, and the ability to walk away from anything at any time. Here's the question nobody asks. Who was actually safer? This video is not about quitting your job or chasing entrepreneurship. It is about something far more dangerous, a hidden cost embedded inside the very thing you believe is protecting you. Job security feels like a foundation, but for millions of people, it quietly becomes an identity, a belief system, the invisible lens through which every financial decision gets filtered. And that is where the problem begins. When security becomes your dominant priority, it reshapes what you learn, what you risk, and what you delay. The cost never appears on a payslip. It accumulates silently until the thing protecting you becomes the thing limiting you. The security tax. The central concept of this entire video is called the security tax. The security tax is not a financial fee. It is not deducted from your paycheck. Nobody sends you a bill. But it is real, it is compounding, and it is being paid by the majority of working adults right now, silently, invisibly, every single day. Here's how it works. Every time you make a financial or life decision with security as your dominant priority, you pay a premium. That premium is not measured in money. It is measured in options you never build, skills you never develop, assets you never acquire, and risks you never take. Over time, those unpurchased options and undeveloped skills compound into a gap, a widening distance between where you are and where you could have been. The security tax is the total cost of everything you did not do because safety felt more important than possibility. Here is what makes this so dangerous and so difficult to accept. The security tax does not hurt, not immediately. In fact, in the short term, it feels like the opposite of pain. It feels like comfort. It feels like certainty. It feels like you made the responsible choice. That is the psychological trap at the core of this entire mechanism. Security, at a neurological level, feels like success. Your brain rewards the removal of uncertainty with a chemical sense of relief. A stable paycheck, a guaranteed contract, a consistent routine. It genuinely feels good. It reduces cortisol. It calms the nervous system. And your brain, which prioritizes the present over the future by default, registers this feeling as a positive outcome. But the future does not care about your present tense relief. The security tax compounds forward. Every year you pay it, you pay slightly more the next year. Because every year spent optimizing for security is a year not spent building optionality. And optionality, the freedom to choose, pivot, exit, and expand, is the actual currency of long-term financial power. Not your paycheck amount, not your job title, not your pension plan, your optionality. This is the idea every other section of this video orbits. The security tax, what it costs, how it compounds, and how to stop paying it. Deep breakdown, the 4 layers of the security tax. The security tax operates across 4 distinct layers. Each one compounds into the next. Layer 1, skill calcification. When you have a stable job, you naturally optimize for the skills that job requires. You become more competent, more efficient, more valuable within that specific context. And for a while, that competence feels like genuine growth. But underneath, something else is happening. The skills you are developing are overwhelmingly context dependent. They are valuable inside your organization, within your industry, in the specific environment your employer operates. The moment that context changes, and in the modern economy, contexts always change, the market value of those skills begins to depreciate. Most people who have worked in a single industry for 20 years are not 20 times more valuable than someone who has worked in it for 1 year. They are more experienced, but their skill set has calcified around a specific way of doing things, specific tools, specific internal knowledge that is almost entirely non-transferable. Meanwhile, people who have navigated uncertainty, who have had to learn new skills frequently, adapt to new environments, sell themselves in unfamiliar markets, have developed something far more portable. Not just skills, but the meta skill of acquiring skills. And in a world where the half-life of professional knowledge is shrinking every decade, that meta skill is worth more than almost any specific certification or title. The security tax at this layer is the slow erosion of your skill market value, happening beneath the surface of daily comfort, invisible until the moment it becomes undeniable. Layer 2, identity compression. This is the psychological layer, and it is the most underestimated one. When you stay in a stable job long enough, your identity begins to reorganize itself around that role. You stop thinking of yourself as a person who happens to work in a certain field. You start thinking of yourself as someone defined by that field. Your status, your social circles, your sense of competence, your daily structure, All of it begins to orbit the job. This is natural. We build identity from consistency. When something is consistently present in our lives, especially something that provides both income and social validation, we absorb it into our self-concept. Here is why this matters financially. When your identity is compressed into a single professional role, your tolerance for financial risk outside that role drops dramatically. Because risk is no longer just risk. It is an identity threat. Losing money on a side business does not just feel like a financial setback. It feels like a failure of self. Starting. Something new and struggling does not feel like a learning curve. It feels like a fundamental challenge to who you believe you are. And so you stop trying things that might work, not because you lack intelligence or ambition, but because the psychological cost of failure has become disproportionately high. Failure, in the architecture of a compressed identity, carries too much collateral damage. The security tax at this layer is the shrinkage of your risk tolerance, not because circumstances demand it, but because identity made it personal. Layer 3, opportunity blindness. Comfort causes its own form of attentional narrowing. When everything is fine, when the paycheck arrives, when the routine is stable, the brain stops scanning for opportunity. It has no reason to. The survival mechanism that drives resourcefulness is not activated because there is no perceived threat. Most people who have been in comfortable jobs for extended periods are not actively looking for opportunity. Not because they are lazy, but because the brain, in a state of stable comfort, has reduced its opportunity scanning radius to near zero. The job is working. The bills are paid. The future feels manageable. So why look elsewhere? And so opportunities pass, not because you cannot see them in theory, but because your attentional system has been calibrated for maintenance, not for growth. You are operating in what psychologists call a maintenance mindset, focused on preserving what you have, rather than expanding what is possible. The security tax at this layer is the steady narrowing of your financial awareness, the slow, invisible closing of your peripheral vision that happens when comfort becomes the default state. Layer 4, compounding in action. This is the most mathematically devastating layer. Every year that you pay the first 3 layers of the security tax, you are also not doing something, not building an asset, not developing a secondary income, not learning to invest strategically, not building a network outside your industry, not creating anything that can grow independently of your labor. Money not deployed, knowledge not acquired, assets not built, compounds at zero. Or worse, because inflation, career complacency, and market shifts are compounding against you the entire time. This is the cruelest layer, because the people paying it are not failing. They are succeeding by every conventional metric, getting promotions, saving a reasonable percentage of income, being responsible and measured. And all of that conventional success is masking a compounding deficit in the background, a widening gap between their trajectory and what was possible. Inaction that feels like stability is not neutral. It has a cost, and that cost compounds. Micro examples: the security tax in everyday life. Let us make this concrete. Quick, real-world snapshots. Someone gets offered a 3-month unpaid leave to work on a business idea they have carried for 2 years. They have the savings to cover it. The idea has real potential. But the anxiety of stepping away from income feels completely disproportionate to the actual risk. They say no. 6 months later, someone else is building the same thing. This is the security tax. Someone has $10,000 in a savings account earning a fraction of 1%. They know intellectually this is not optimal. But every time they sit down to move that money, something stops them. A quiet unease, a fear of making the wrong move, a voice that says, at least it is safe here. The money stays. For years. This is the security tax. Someone spends 5 years in the same company without asking for a significant raise because asking feels like destabilizing the relationship they have built. They tell themselves good work speaks for itself. They are being paid 70% of what someone at a different company earns for the same output. This is the security tax. Someone has the technical skill to freelance and could be earning an additional $1,500 a month from outside clients. But the administrative overhead, invoicing, managing client relationships, operating outside employer structure feels overwhelming. So they never start, not because it is impossible, because the uncertainty feels too high. This is the security tax. None of these involve catastrophic failure. None involve wildly irrational decisions. They all involve ordinary, reasonable feeling decisions that carry an invisible, long-term cost. That is the entire point. Rules and principles. Rule 1, audit your optionality. Every year. Once a year, ask yourself a specific set of questions. How many income streams do you have? How many of your skills are transferable outside your current employer? How long could you financially survive if you make this year driven by possibility rather than protection? These questions do not require dramatic action. They require honesty. And the honesty alone creates enough discomfort to motivate movement. Most people never audit their optionality because the audit reveals the full weight of what they have not built. Do it anyway. Rule 2, separate security from identity. Your job is a financial arrangement. It is not your identity. When you conflate your professional role with your sense of self, you make every financial decision in defense of an identity rather than in pursuit of an outcome. A practical way to begin this separation is to regularly invest time, not money, in skills, projects, and relationships that exist entirely outside your current employment context. Not to leave your job immediately, simply to maintain a version of yourself that does not depend on your employer's continued existence for its sense of worth. Rule 3. Calculate the real cost of staying. When evaluating whether to stay in a role, stop only calculating the cost of leaving. Start calculating the cost of staying. What are you not learning? What is your skill market value doing, growing or plateauing? What would someone with your experience be earning if they negotiated aggressively or moved to a faster growing environment? The cost of staying is never zero. It simply feels like zero because it does not arrive as a visible deduction. Naming it changes how you weigh the decision. Rule 4. Treat your career as an investment portfolio. An investment portfolio is never fully concentrated in a single asset. That is considered reckless, regardless of how strong that asset appears. Your income, skills, and professional relationships should be evaluated through the same lens. A single employer, a single skill set, a single professional network is a maximally concentrated position. It has the characteristics of high risk entirely, dependent on one entity's goodwill, while feeling psychologically like the opposite. Diversify deliberately. One new skill, one external relationship, one income test, build from there. Rule 5. Make one uncomfortable. Financial decision per quarter. Comfort has a gravitational pull. Left uninterrupted, it compounds into paralysis. To resist that pull, make a systematic practice of deliberate discomfort, specifically in financial decisions. 4 times a year, make a choice that involves some financial uncertainty. Open the investment account you have been avoiding. Negotiate something you have been afraid to negotiate. Test a skill in a market. The decision does not have to be large, but it has to be uncomfortable. The muscle that makes good decisions under uncertainty atrophies under continuous comfort. Use it deliberately. Rule 6. Convert risk aversion into risk literacy. Most people believe their problem with financial risk is psychological, that they are simply risk averse, but in most cases, what looks like risk aversion is risk illiteracy, a lack of understanding of how specific risks actually work. When people understand an investment well enough to model realistic outcomes, not best case, not worst case, but the actual probable range, their fear drops significantly, not because the risk disappeared, but because understanding converts abstract fear into calculable probability, and calculable probability is manageable. Invest in understanding the things you are afraid to invest in financially. Rule 7. Build savings as a platform for offense, not just defense. Most people think of savings as a safety net, something to fall back on. That framing keeps savings passive and defensive. But savings have a second function, far more powerful. They are a platform for offense. When you have 6 to 12 months of living expenses saved, you do not just have protection. You have negotiating power. You have the ability to leave a situation that is not serving you. You have the ability to take a calculated risk without fear of losing. Everything, if it does not work immediately. Build savings with that dual purpose in mind. They will change your behavior as much as your balance sheet. Numbers and reality. Check. Let us convert the security tax into actual numbers, because when you do, the scale becomes impossible to ignore. The average salaried worker who stays in the same company for 5 or more years earns on average 10 to 20% less than their equivalent on the open job market. Over a 40-year career, even a conservative 10% pay gap, compounded annually, represents a significant 6-figure difference in total lifetime earnings. This is the documented consequence of salary compression, the tendency of internal raises to lag far behind external market rates. Now add the investment dimension. Someone who begins investing $200 a month consistently at age 30 at a conservative 7% annual return will have accumulated approximately $500,000 by 60. Someone who waits until 40 to begin the same practice because the retirement plan at work felt sufficient, because there was always a reason to delay, accumulates roughly $240,000. That 10-year delay, driven entirely by comfort-induced inertia, costs $260,000. Not $260,000 lost in a bad investment. $260,000 lost to the decision to wait. Consider one more angle. Someone who develops a single high-value freelance skill and generates an additional $1,500 per month in income, beginning at age 35, has by 60 either built a meaningful supplementary income stream or, if invested, substantial additional wealth. This does not require genius. It requires one skill deployed deliberately over time. The compounding math of inaction is not taught in schools and rarely confronted honestly, because the immediate version of inaction feels like stability, and we are not biologically wired to fear gradual divergence from a better future. We are wired to fear immediate threats. The security tax exploits this biological mismatch perfectly. The cost is real. The threat is slow. The invisibility is precisely what makes it so effective. Consider two people, same salary, same city, same age, 32, both earning $65,000 a year. The first treats their salary as their financial plan. They save into a company pension, maintain a small emergency fund, and focus their energy on being excellent at their current role. By 45, they are earning $80,000. They have a pension they largely do not understand, savings of roughly $40,000, and a professional identity almost entirely bound to a single industry in which they have spent 13 years. The second treats their salary as a starting point. They live on $50,000 and deploy the remaining $15,000 deliberately. $7,000 goes into index funds. $3,000 goes into a small experiment, a freelance skill, a small digital product, an investment test. $5,000 goes into their own education. They also take one professional risk per year: a new employer, a negotiation, a move into a faster-growing industry. By 45, they are earning $120,000, not because of one dramatic move, but because of 13 years of compounding deliberate decisions. Their portfolio is substantial. They have a secondary income stream. Their skill market value is accelerating, not declining. Same starting point, same early salary, radically different trajectory. The second person did not take reckless gambles or sacrifice quality of life. They simply treated security as a floor, the minimum acceptable condition, rather than the ceiling of their financial ambition. That one philosophical difference, compounded over 13 years, produced not just a financial gap, but an entirely different relationship with money, risk, and possibility. The security tax is being paid right now by people doing everything right by conventional standards. The tragedy is not that they made bad choices, it is that they made safe choices without calculating what those choices cost. Real safety is not the absence of risk, it is the presence of options. And options are not given, they are built. Audit your optionality, develop portable skills, invest now imperfectly, separate your identity from your employer. Because safety that quietly takes away your future is not safety at all. It is just a slower kind of risk.